I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Transport yourself 5 miles deep into the American wilderness. Maybe you're tracking elk in the dense pine ridges of the Pacific Northwest. Maybe you're hiking the Appalachian Trail in the Great Smoky Mountain. Or maybe you're just sitting on your back porch in rural Ohio, listening to the night sounds. The forest is loud. We tend to forget that. Nature is a chaotic machine. You hear the wind rushing through the canopy 100 feet above your head like a river. You hear the squirrels barking warnings in the dry leaves. You hear the crickets, the tree frogs, the owls. It is a wall of sound. But you feel safe because you know the rhythm of the woods. You know that noise means life. And then, someone hits the mute button. In a single heartbeat, the forest goes dead. The birds stop singing mid-note. The crickets freeze. The wind dies down to a suffocating, unnatural calm. The air pressure drops suddenly, popping your ears as if you are descending rapidly in an airplane. You feel a sudden, static charge prickling on the back of your neck. The hair on your arms stands up. The temperature seems to drop 10 degrees in a second. You aren't alone anymore. Experienced hunters, combat veterans, and law enforcement officers have a specific name for this phenomenon. They call it the Oz effect. It is the moment the simulation glitches. It is the moment the forest holds its breath because the apex predator has arrived. But we aren't talking about a bear. We aren't talking about a mountain lion. Because when a bear walks through the woods, the blue jays scream. The deer bolt. Nature warns you that a biological predator is coming. But when this entity arrives, nature doesn't run. Nature hides. For decades, we have been told a comfortable lie. We've been told that Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, the Yowie, the Grassman is just a monkey, a biological animal, an unclassified great ape that has somehow managed to avoid every trail camera, every thermal drone, and every satellite sweep in human history. They tell us it's a North American wood ape. They tell us it eats berries, sleeps in caves, and runs from humans. And for a long time, that explanation felt safe. It made sense to our modern scientific minds. It's just an animal, right? Just a smart monkey playing hide and seek. But if you are being intellectually honest, you know that explanation doesn't fit the facts anymore, because biology follows rules. Matter cannot be created or destroyed without a trace. Biology leaves bones. Biology leaves carcasses when it dies. Biology gets hit by logging trucks on remote highways. Biology leaves DNA that fits into the family tree of Earth. We have been looking for this creature for over 100 years. We have millions of hunters in the woods every season. And yet, 0 bones, 0 bodies, 0 roadkill. If there was a breeding population of thousands of 8-foot-tall, 800-pound apes living in our national parks, we would have found them by now. The math simply doesn't add up. So, we are left with 2 uncomfortable possibilities. Option 1. Every single one of the thousands of witnesses, police officers, pilots, judges, native elders, is lying. Or, option 2. The reason we haven't found the body is because they aren't fully here. This is where David Paulides comes in. He is the former police detective behind the chilling Missing 411 phenomenon. He has spent the last decade connecting the dots that mainstream science refuses to touch. He approached this subject not as a Bigfoot hunter, but as a detective. He looked at the cold, hard facts. He looked at the missing person reports. He looked at the silence of the authorities, and his conclusion moves beyond the simple ape theory. He is asking the question that makes the scientific community uncomfortable. He is asking the question that terrified the witnesses I mentioned in the comments of my last video. Today, we are going to walk into the dark. We are going to strip away the monkey suit theory and look at the evidence that suggests this creature is something far more complex and far more dangerous. We are going to examine the reports of creatures that can manipulate light to become invisible, the predator shimmer. We will look at the ancient Native American accounts of star people and portals. And finally, we will open the Bible to Genesis chapter 6 to see if the answer has been written down for thousands of years. But to understand what they are, we first have to look at what they do, because there is one piece of physical evidence that physics cannot explain, a phenomenon that has left seasoned trackers shaking their heads in disbelief. I'm talking about the footprints that don't just walk away. They vanish into thin air. Let's stop for a second, because right now I know the skeptics are probably typing in the comments, If these things are interdimensional ghost beings, why do they leave footprints? And you are absolutely right. This is the paradox that drives researchers crazy. This creature isn't a ghost. It has mass, it has weight, it breaks branches, it leaves deep impressions in the mud that would require a hydraulic press to replicate. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, a professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University, has risked his entire academic reputation to study these casts. He isn't looking at shapeless blobs of mud, he is looking at biomechanics. He discovered something called the mid-tarsal break. Look at your own foot. You have a rigid arch. You need that stiffness to walk upright. Now look at an ape. They have a flat, flexible foot for climbing. The footprints found in the wild show a hybrid, a biological masterpiece that is flat and flexible like an ape, but rigid enough to support 800 pounds of muscle. It is an evolutionary design built for one thing: speed over brutal terrain. So, we know they are physical. We know they walk, but here is where the physics breaks down. I want to share a report that David Paulides has highlighted, one that keeps experienced trackers awake at night. Imagine a veteran elk hunter in the Rockies. He finds a fresh trackway in the snow. Massive prints, 5 feet between steps. The snow is deep, and there are no other marks around. He follows them. He knows he's closing in. The tracks lead into a box canyon, steep, sheer rock walls on 3 sides. There is no exit. He raises his rifle, expecting to find the beast cornered against the cliff. He rounds the bend. The canyon is empty. The tracks don't turn around. They don't scramble up the vertical rock face. There is no blood, no sign of a struggle, and no wingspan marks from a bird of prey. The footprints simply stop. It looks as if the creature was plucked off the face of the earth by a skyhook, or as if it walked through a door that closed behind it. This aligns perfectly with the missing 411 cases. How many times has Paulides reported on search and rescue dogs, some of the best noses in the world, tracking a scent for miles, only to stop dead? They don't lose the scent. They refuse to continue. They tuck their tails. They whimper. They act as if the target didn't just walk away, but vanished from this dimension entirely. If Bigfoot is just a monkey, why do the tracks vanish? And if they are just animals, why does their DNA tell a story that sounds more like a biblical warning than a biology textbook? This brings us to the most controversial evidence of all. The evidence that got researchers like the late Scott Carpenter ridiculed by the mainstream. The DNA. Over the years, hair and blood samples have been analyzed, and while many are inconclusive, a few return a result that is terrifying. The mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down from the mother, tests as 100% human, Homo sapiens, but the nuclear DNA, the father, tests as unknown, something related to us, but not us. Let that sink in. Human mothers, unknown fathers, a hybrid. This data makes the scientific community furious. They reject it because it doesn't fit the model, but it aligns disturbingly well with the stories from Native American elders who say these tribes steal women. And it aligns even better with the comment section of this very channel. The Nephilim, the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. So, we have a creature that is physical enough to leave footprints, but capable of vanishing from a box canyon without a trace. We have a creature that is biologically related to us, but possesses abilities we can only dream of. If they aren't flying away, and they aren't digging holes, how are they disappearing? The answer might be staring us right in the face. Witnesses call it the shimmer, and it suggests that while we are playing checkers, they are playing quantum chess. If you mention teleporting Bigfoot or invisible monsters to a mainstream biologist, they will laugh you out of the room. They call it the woo. They call it fantasy. But if you talk to the witnesses, the hunters, the soldiers, the people who have stood face to face with the impossible, they don't laugh. They get quiet. And they all use the exact same comparison. It looked like the creature from the movie Predator. For years, researchers threw these reports in the trash. But David Paulides has forced us to look at them, because when thousands of unrelated people describe the exact same optical illusion, it is no longer a coincidence. It is data. I want to highlight a specific report from British Columbia, one that was actually shared in the comments of a recent discussion on this topic by a user named Silver Bullets. It chills me to the bone because the details are so specific. A family was driving down a remote forestry road near Harrison, BC. They passed an active logging site. As they rounded a sharp bend, they hit the brakes. Standing on the side of the road wasn't a bear. It wasn't a man. They described it as a dark, foggy, pixelated mass. It was 8 feet wide and 12 feet tall. The witness said it was there, but it wasn't. It looked like a glitch, a pixelated shadow. They watched it for 10 seconds. It moved across the road, not walking, but gliding. It stopped on the driver's side and observed them. They felt an intense intelligence coming from this nothingness. Then, just as a logging truck approached from behind them, the entity vanished. Is this magic? Or is it simply a level of physics we haven't mastered yet? We know that in biology, the octopus can change the texture and color of its skin in milliseconds to vanish into a coral reef. They are the masters of biological camouflage. We know that the U.S. military is currently developing metamaterial cloaking shields that bend light around an object, rendering it invisible to the naked eye. If an ancient species has had hundreds of thousands of years to evolve, or if they possess technology we don't understand, is cloaking really that impossible? Researchers call these entities glimmermen. Witnesses describe seeing a heat haze like hot air rising off asphalt in the summer, but in the shape of a giant man, moving through the winter woods. But David Paulides raises a darker possibility, a theory that explains why the search dogs refuse to track them. What if they aren't just bending light? What if they are vibrating at a different frequency? Think of a radio. Your reality is tuned to 101.5. The Bigfoot reality is tuned to 101.6. They are standing right next to you. You can feel the static charge. You can smell that horrific sulfur odor. The Oz effect silence is screaming that they are there. But because they are vibrating just slightly out of phase with our dimension, your eyes cannot register them. You see a blur, a shimmer, a shadow. This theory offers a terrifying explanation for the missing 411 disappearances. We have cases where a child vanishes instantly while walking just 10 feet behind their parents. Search and rescue teams comb the area for days. They find nothing. Then, 7 days later, the body is found in the middle of the trail they searched 100 times. Or worse, the child is found alive, miles away, with no memory of how they got there, claiming the big man carried them. Did the searchers miss the body? Or was the body there the whole time, just tuned to a different frequency? If these beings can step in and out of our visual spectrum, then we aren't the hunters, we are the prey. But if the shimmer is how they hide, how do they travel? Because the witnesses who see the glimmer man often report seeing something else just moments before the encounter. They don't see a spaceship. They don't see a saucer. They see balls of light, floating, intelligent orbs that weave through the trees like sentries. And according to a rancher from the 1890s, these lights aren't just observing us, they are the transportation. If the shimmer is how they hide, then the orbs are how they travel. If you spend enough time in the Bigfoot rabbit hole, you eventually hit a wall where biology stops making sense and the paranormal begins. Skeptics hate this part. They want the monkey, they want the flesh and blood ape that fits neatly in a zoo. But you cannot ignore the data. Go to any major hotspot, Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, the Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania, or the deep swamps of the South. Ask the locals what they see. They won't just tell you about the hairy monsters, they will tell you about the lights, floating, silent orbs of light, usually amber, blue, or white, that drift through the forest canopy just minutes before or after a Sasquatch encounter. They don't act like lightning bugs, they act like sentries. They stop, they reverse direction. They observe. David Paulides uncovered a historical account that might be the smoking gun for this connection. It comes from a rancher's journal dated back to the late 1800s. This rancher was running cattle in the high country near the California-Oregon border. Over time, he befriended a local Native American tribe that lived in the area. One day, he noticed the tribe leaving massive piles of fresh meat and fish, hundreds of pounds of food on a high, remote ridge. The rancher knew food was scarce. He asked the elder, "Why are you wasting all this food? The bears are sleeping. The wolves can hunt for themselves." The elder looked at him and said, "It is not for the bears. It is for the hairy ones, the old men who live above." The rancher asked, "Do they live in the caves up there?" The elder shook his head. He looked at the rancher and said, "No, They come from the moon. Now, you have to understand the context here. This was 1890. This elder didn't watch Star Trek. He didn't know what a UFO or a portal or a spaceship was. He used the vocabulary he had to describe what he saw. He told the rancher, once a season, a small flaming moon comes down from the sky. It lands in the meadow. The hairy ones step out. They take the food, they visit with us, and then they get back into the moon and it shoots back into the stars. A flaming moon. Think about that description. If you were a person from the 19th century and you saw a glowing spherical craft descend from the sky, wouldn't you call it a moon? This story aligns perfectly with modern reports. In the comments of our last video, a subscriber named Higgs Boson shared a heartbreaking story about his childhood friend, a Native American boy named Anthony. He said Anthony was bullied in school because he insisted Bigfoot was real. Why was he so sure? Because Anthony, his mother, and his sister were hiking on the reservation when they saw 3 of them. They didn't just run into the woods. Anthony said, "We watched them walk into a clearing, and a portal opened in the air. They walked right into it like walking through a curtain, and they were gone." Another viewer, a retired biology professor, claimed he saw a bipedal creature leaping from boulder to boulder in the Cascades, defying gravity, before vanishing near a strange light. If Bigfoot is an interdimensional traveler, an entity that uses these orbs or flaming moons as transport, it explains everything that biology cannot. It explains why we never find the bones because they don't die here. It explains why we never find the scat or the food sources needed to support a massive population because they don't eat here permanently. They commute here. They are visitors. But the question is, visiting from where and why? Are they aliens? Are they travelers? Or are they something much older? Something that has been trapped here since the beginning of time. This leads us to the final and most terrifying theory, the one that connects the DNA evidence, the Star People legends, and the ancient texts of the Bible. Because if you look at the comments section, most of you already know the name of what we are dealing with. You don't call it Bigfoot, you call it the Nephilim. If you scroll down to the comments section of any video discussing high strangeness or the missing 411 phenomenon, including the one you are watching right now, you will see one specific word repeated more than any other. It isn't monkey, it isn't ape, it isn't bear. It is a word that dates back thousands of years. Nephilim. For the scientific community, this is a myth. But for the spiritual community, there is no mystery here. They believe the answer hasn't been hiding in the woods. It's been hiding in plain sight, written in the oldest texts of human history. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Genesis 6-4, the book of Genesis, the book of Enoch, and ancient Sumerian texts all tell the same terrifying story. They speak of the Watchers, angels or celestial beings who fell from grace. They didn't just observe humanity, they interfered. They mated with human women, and their offspring were the Nephilim, the giants, the men of renown. The Bible says the great flood was sent to wipe this corruption off the face of the earth, but the text adds a chilling phrase that most people overlook, and also after that, meaning they came back. Or they survived. David Paulides has famously pointed out that many missing 411 victims are found in impossible-to-reach locations, high granite peaks, and boulder fields far above the tree line. Why? Perhaps it is an ancestral memory of the flood. Perhaps these beings are still hiding in the highest places, instinctively terrified of the water rising again. Now, let's leave the theology for a second and go back to the science, because this is where things get truly unsettling. Researchers like the late Scott Carpenter, who many of you mentioned in the comments, spent years analyzing Bigfoot DNA samples. He didn't approach this as a preacher, he approached it as a researcher, and the results he found aligned perfectly with the Nephilim narrative. When they sequence the DNA from these alleged hair samples, they often find a biological contradiction. The mitochondrial DNA, the lineage passed down strictly from the mother tests, as 100% human, Homo sapiens. But the nuclear DNA, the lineage from the father, tests as unknown. It is primate-like, but it does not match any known animal on Earth. Human mothers, unknown fathers. A hybrid. This explains why they look like us, but aren't us. It explains why they walk upright and possess high intelligence. As one of our subscribers, Aficionadouf RC, pointed out in a recent comment, the reason Bigfoot is so physically capable is because of its Nephilim DNA. But the reason it can move between dimensions is because it has fallen angel technology. This theory also explains the dread. When you meet a bear in the woods, you feel physical fear. Your adrenaline spikes. You are afraid of being bitten. That is biology. But when witnesses meet a Sasquatch, they describe something else entirely. They describe spiritual terror. They describe a sensation of absolute evil, a feeling that their soul is in danger, not just their body. And there is one final piece of evidence that connects this to the spiritual realm. In the comments of our last video, a user named G. Brown shared a story about a family camping by a lake. A UFO or orb came at them at tremendous speed. The father didn't shoot at it. He didn't run. He stood up and screamed, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," and the object instantly halted, reversed course, and fled. We have reports of people cornered by these creatures in the deep woods, paralyzed with fear, and the moment they pray, the moment they invoke spiritual authority, the creature leaves. If this was just a hungry ape, why would it care about a prayer? Why would a biological animal react to a name? It wouldn't, but a Nephilim would. So, we have the tracks of a monster, we have the cloaking ability of an alien, and we have the DNA of a hybrid. It seems we have solved the mystery of what they are, but that leaves one final, terrifying question. The question that David Paulides has dedicated his life to answering. If they are here, and they are hungry, and they can step between worlds, what happens to the people who vanish? And what is the one lesson we must learn before we step back into the woods? David Paulides didn't start the Missing 411 project to hunt Bigfoot. He started it because he was a detective, and detectives notice patterns. Over 1,600 documented cases, people who walked into the American wilderness and simply ceased to exist. Not lost hikers who succumbed to exposure, not elderly dementia patients, not inexperienced tourists. We're talking about experienced hunters who know the land like the back of their hand. We're talking about marathon runners in peak physical condition. We're talking about children who vanished in the span of time it took their father to tie his boot less than 90 seconds. And when you plot these disappearances on a map, the pattern becomes undeniable. They cluster. They cluster around granite boulder fields, around berry-rich alpine meadows, around remote forestry roads in the deep wilderness. The exact same terrain where Bigfoot sightings are most heavily reported. Coincidence? Or hunting grounds? Paulides has documented cases where elite search and rescue dogs, animals trained to track human scent through rivers, snow, and fire suddenly stop cold on a trail. They don't lose the scent. They refuse to continue. They tuck their tails between their legs. They whimper. Some lie down and won't move, no matter how hard the handler commands them. It's as if the person they were tracking didn't just walk away, but stepped off the edge of reality itself. And then there are the bodies that reappear. Paulides has documented cases where a missing child is searched for by hundreds of volunteers, cadaver dogs, helicopters with thermal imaging, and ground-penetrating radar. They search the same trail 20, 30, 50 times. Nothing. Then, on day 7, a hiker finds the body lying in the middle of the main trail, in plain sight, in an area that was walked over 100 times by trained professionals. The official explanation? We missed it. But here's the problem. When they find the body, there's no evidence of scavenger activity, no sign the body was dragged there. It looks placed, as if it was returned. And then there's the detail that law enforcement doesn't want to talk about publicly: the shoes. In a statistically impossible number of cases, especially with children when the body is finally found, the shoes and socks are missing, not ripped off by a bear, not lost in a river, not removed because the child was hot, just gone. Paulides asked a wilderness survival expert, why would a child remove their shoes in freezing temperatures? The expert said, they wouldn't. It goes against every human survival instinct. So why are the shoes missing? If you believe the Native American elders, you already know the answer. They say the star people, or the old ones, remove the shoes because iron and leather tether the soul to the earth. If you are being taken through dimensions, the material anchors must be removed first. Does that sound insane? Absolutely. Does it explain the data better than The child voluntarily removed their shoes in sub-freezing weather for no reason? Also yes. So here's the question we have to confront. If these beings are real, if they are physical enough to leave 18-inch footprints, intelligent enough to bend light and vanish, powerful enough to move between dimensions, then what do they want with us? Some researchers want to believe they're peaceful, that they only intervene to help lost hikers, that they're benevolent guardians of the forest. But David Paulides doesn't traffic in wishful thinking. He traffics in evidence. And the evidence shows that healthy, physically strong people disappear at a higher rate than the sick or elderly. The evidence shows people vanish during peak berry season when these creatures are most active. The evidence shows that victims are found miles away, in impossible locations, at elevations that would require superhuman strength to reach, as if they were carried. So what do we do with this information? Do we abandon the wilderness? Do we lock ourselves indoors out of fear? No, because fear is the weapon, and authority is the shield. Whether you believe these beings are Nephilim, interdimensional predators, or something else entirely, the witness reports all share one critical detail. They are empowered by terror, and they are repelled by spiritual authority. If you're going into the woods, here's what you need to know. 1. Never go alone. These disappearances almost always happen to solo hikers or individuals who separate from their group. 2. Bring a firearm if it's legal in your area, not because you can kill them, but because they respect power. Witnesses who stood their ground with weapons report the creatures retreating. 3. Carry a whistle, a GPS beacon, and tell someone exactly where you're going. The missing are often found miles off trail in areas they had no reason to be. 4. And I know this will make the skeptics roll their eyes, but I'm going to say it anyway because the data supports it. Bring spiritual authority. Pray before you enter the woods. Speak aloud that you are a sovereign being, made in the image of the Creator, and you do not consent to be harmed or taken. We have documented cases, dozens of them, including several shared in your comments, where people invoked the name of Jesus Christ, and the oppression instantly lifted. We have reports of people who commanded these entities to leave in the name of the Father, and they fled. If these were just biological animals, that shouldn't work, but it does. And that tells you everything you need to know about what they really are. David Paulides hands you the files and says, you decide. So now, I'm handing the question to you. After everything we've covered, the vanishing footprints, the hybrid DNA, the predator cloaking, the orbs, the ancient warnings in Genesis, the missing people found in impossible places with their shoes removed, what do you believe we're dealing with? Is this an undiscovered great ape that has simply mastered the art of hiding? Is this an interdimensional traveler using technology we can't comprehend? Or is this the Nephilim, the cursed offspring of the Watchers, still walking the earth, hiding in the high places, waiting? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you've had an encounter, if you've felt the Oz effect, if you've seen the shimmer, if you've survived something in the woods that you can't explain, share your story. Because the more we talk about this, the harder it becomes for them to hide. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what they fear most. Stay safe out there. Remember, you are not prey unless you believe you are.